Port Olisar. It's where we all begin our journey in Star Citizen, and today you begin yours. Welcome to the channel, I'm Morphologist. In this guide, I'm going to teach you how to survive your first few hours of Star Citizen, because it's not always the most friendly of places. By the end, you'll have a good handle of the basics, but you'll also be well on your way to upgrading your ship and, of course, working your way towards your first new ship in-game. But there's a bit of a problem. You see, I've played Star Citizen for a while and I've got a lot of ships, so it's been a long time since I've started from zero. So in order to ensure that the advice I give here is correct, I purchased an entirely new account and followed my own advice. Not once, but twice, to make sure that what I was telling you was correct. This guide is based on the starter pack plus an upgrade to the Avenger Titan, which will total you $60 when all is said and done. Also, it is based on the premise that you have used someone's referral code, and if you haven't, you may use mine here on the screen because it's going to give you 5,000 AUEC starting cash, which you'll need to complete this guide. Stepping out of your easy hab for the first time, the first thing you're going to want to do is become familiar with your Mobiglass. You can access it by hitting F1. This is going to give a readout of your character's status as well as how much money you have and what your crime stat is. These are the most important variables for now. You should be starting with 10,000 AUEC if you've followed my guide so far. Once you've become comfortable with basic movement, make your way down to Deck 1 and to the ASOP Terminal Atrium. This is the area from which we will call our ship out, but first we need to gather up the tools necessary for our journey. Our first stop is going to be at the Live Fire Weapons Shop, which is where we're going to purchase med pens as well as some chem lights. Now, med pens are consumable self-healing items that will save us in the event that we start bleeding and, well, prevent us from having to be reset back to Port Olisar. They can be purchased straight off the shelf by using the Inner Thought system. Hold F and select Buy, which will bring up your Mobiglass. There, select Confirm Purchase until you've bought a couple. Perform this action again for the chem lights so that you can have a few of those as well. Now, in my instance, I could only purchase one because that was all that was available. They're pretty hot right now, and so they're hard to get hands on. This should leave you with 9,871 UEC. It's worth noting though that you can also purchase items here through the terminal on the wall. All shops usually have these. This is great if you want to purchase items in bulk. You can also purchase weapons from this terminal, but we're going to avoid that for now as they will break the budget this early on. We're going to instead save for these and come back to them later. Now that we're done in live fire weapons, let's head on over to Garrity Defense, where we're going to purchase the new rucksack, which is new to 3.7. This backpack is part of the new inventory system that we're going to be utilizing for collecting valuable items later in this guide, so this is an absolute must. It can be purchased straight off the mannequin just as we purchase the med pens off the counter. Simply go up to it and use the Inner Thought to purchase it. Now this is going to cost you 3,094 AUEC. This leaves you with enough to complete a light armor set, which is beneficial for protection in case you run up against a player and gives you enough time to maybe run away. Light armor is not going to protect you that much, but it will give you more of a fighting chance if you do run into a hostile player. It also gives you an additional utility slot over the standard that you get with just the flight suit. To equip the items that you've purchased, hit F1 to access your Mobiglass and go down to your Equipment Manager, which will be the third tab on the bottom from the left. Here, go to the Armor tab on the top and equip your rucksack, your arm armor, and your leg armor. You'll also want to equip your med pens into your med pen slot under the Utility tab. Now we're ready to make our way out into the verse, so make your way back to the ASOP terminal and call out your ship. Once your ship has been called, you'll be given a location on a pad. The pad signs will direct you where to go, but you can also find the icon that pops up on your HUD, which will lead you to your ship. You will have to go outside through the airlock, so make sure that you've got your helmet on. And now our journey begins in earnest. It's time to spread your wings for the first time. Don't worry, I'll walk you through it. To access your Titan Avenger, go to the rear cargo hatch and use the Inner Thought key to select the hatch itself. This will drop it down and allow you access into its rear cargo bay. It's in this modest space you'll be able to fit things like a buggy or a dragonfly in the future once you've earned enough money to buy it in one of the many ship shops you'll find about the verse. Simply go forward through the living section of your ship and access your flight seat by using the inner thought key once again. The first thing you're going to want to do is bring your ship to flight ready. Simply hold down the inner thought key and go down to flight ready on the dashboard. Now, as your ship surges to life for the first time, you may be overwhelmed by all the MFD readouts on your dashboard, but don't worry, you'll learn these in time, and if you want to take a moment to familiarize yourself with these systems, please do. I'll be doing a video at some later date explaining all of them in greater detail, so be sure to subscribe for that. The first thing you're going to want to know how to use though is the comms menu, which can be accessed through any one of your MFDs, which are customizable. Holding the inner thought key, use the mouse wheel to zoom in and then select the menu button. Then find the icon that looks like a Wi-Fi icon and click on that app. It'll open up your comms menu. You'll need to hit the icon here to communicate with Port Olisar to either land or take off in places like cities and stations. You can also access this through the contacts menu in your mobiGlas by clicking on Port Olisar and the little arrow to the lower right of that name. That will do the same exact thing if the MFD isn't working. Now let's go over some flight control basics. If you guys already know how to control your ship, you can skip over this part. But those of you who don't, we're going to be using a mouse and keyboard for this setup. So your mouse will control your pitch and your yaw. If you want to roll, use the Q and E keys. To move forward, hit W, backward S, left and right strafe are A and D. To go straight up or down, that would be the spacebar and the control key as default. To cycle your weapon's gimbal mode from manual to fixed or to auto gimbal assist, simply hit the R key to go in between them. The dotted circles will represent auto gimbal mode. To cycle the nearest enemy target, hit Alt 1. To cycle enemy targets in general, hit 3, and to cycle friendly targets, hit 5. To modify your ship's max speed, use your mouse wheel. If you go above the red line on your HUD on the left there, it will exceed the thruster's ability to properly counteract your ship's inertia, so being able to turn quickly beyond that is going to be difficult for your ship. Only do this if you're in dire need or if you're traveling in a straight line. Hit C then to also automatically go up to that speed and hold until you disengage. It'll take some time for you to familiarize yourself with your ship's capabilities, so make sure you experiment with this before you get into combat. To test out firing your weapons, leave the safe zone of Port Olisar and use mouse 1 to fire your primary and mouse 2 to fire your secondary. You can click both of them together to fire both at once. If you encounter enemy missiles, make sure you use the countermeasures of your ship by cycling between flare and chaff, which can be done with the H key. You can deploy those countermeasures then by hitting G. To fire missiles of your own, make sure you have whoever you want to shoot targeted and hit the middle mouse button, and that will lock on target. Hit it once more to fire your missile. For now, that's the basics. If you guys want to find out more advanced controls, you can do that by checking your key bindings menu in Star Citizen. Now it's time for us to head off to our next stop. We're going to go over to Levski so we can get our hands on one of the mining tools that we're going to need to make money in this early stage of the game. It's kind of far, so we're going to have to use our quantum drive. We'll have to set our waypoint by hitting F2 to access our mobiGlas's map. Here you'll see a big map of the Stanton system. Look around until you find the planetoid Delamar. Double click on it to zoom in and then hit set route to set that as our destination. The line should now turn solid, and if we exit mobiGlas, we should have an icon on our screen now for that planet. To activate your quantum drive, hit B and align and wait for the quantum drive to both spool and finish calibrating. Once calibration and spooling is complete, hold B to activate the quantum drive and you will be on your way to Delamar. Now, once you arrive to a planet, or planetoid in the case here of Delamar, you're still going to want to warp to the location on that moon or planet. In order to get there, use your quantum drive once again and find your goal location. In this case, we're looking for Levski, which will be indicated by the shield icon, and it will also say Levski right next to it. Just as before, once you've locked on, hold down B to warp to the target. Exiting quantum travel, you're still going to be a bit away from the target. Hit B to double check where it is, as we currently do not have icons that stay on the HUD when you're not in quantum travel, and then turn it off to continue in the correct direction. You also may want to just take some time to enjoy the flight. I personally find it fun to fly between the canyons, but be careful, there's no atmosphere here, so you could potentially fly into a wall. Now we're going to have to use the comms as I've shown you earlier. To access them, go through your MFD or use your MobiGlass as an alternative. This way you can request a hangar. This is the only way for you to set a spawn point. You have to land at a major city and touch down within the hangar for it to be registered. That way, if you die while you're doing missions in the area, you'll respawn there as opposed to Port Olisar, which can be a pretty big hassle if you die at, say, Area 18 or Hurston, when you still have your spawn point back at Port Olisar, because that journey is going to take another 15 minutes just to get back to where you were before. So do yourself a favor and land at major cities when you're traveling across the verse. Once you've exited your ship, make your way to the elevator and go on up to customs. Once you've made it topside, make your way through customs and over to one of the freight elevators, which can be located on either side of the statue as you go through the checkpoint. Once you're down at the bottom, you'll find a big sign in a ventilation shaft called Grand Barter. Now, Levski's a pretty cool place, especially for those of us who like that really lived-in feel of a universe. This has got a story to it, and if you look around long enough, you'll find it. But once you've satisfied that curiosity, head on over to Conscientious Objects, which is on the upper mezzanine. There is where you're going to purchase your next item, and the most important item on our trip here. It is the mining tool, which was added into 3.7. Well, actually, it's a multi-tool with multiple functions, but for now, it's going to be a mining tool, and we're going to also have to purchase the bit along with it. Purchase them just as I've shown you earlier, but also make sure you purchase the mining attachment. That's what you're going to need in order to make this function as a mining tool. After all is said and done, you should be left with approximately 4,606 UEC.
Smart buy.
Now, you could potentially here purchase a weapon, but I would encourage you to resist the urge because, like I said, we're going to need to use that money in order to work towards doing our first rental, which is going to make the bulk of our money. After you've purchased your items, head back to your ship and get back into space. We're now going to want to set our waypoint to Hurston. We're going to Hurston because there's not going to be as many new players to bother you while you're doing mining missions. This is also a great place to go for just missions in general. There's a lot of combat to be had here, a lot of different caves with high value items in them, and so as a starter new player, I think this is a great place to go to. You can also get ship rentals from here, whereas there is no place to get ship rentals from in Port Olisar or anywhere in the Crusader area of the system. Welcome to the desolate wasteland that is Hurston, a planet named after Hurston Dynamics, a weapons manufacturer in the verse. They use this place to test their newest and most destructive devices. As such, the ecosystem has been mostly destroyed, but you will find green patches scattered here and there about the surface. So if you want to take some time to explore, it's a pretty beautiful place and I highly encourage you do so. But once you're good and ready, head on over to Lorville, because this is where we're going to set our next spawn point. Hurston's a really big city, and it's going to take you some time to explore it. If you do want to do that, again, as always, I encourage you to satiate your exploration desire. This is your first experience in Star Citizen, and Lorville's a pretty darn cool place. But once you're good and ready, you're going to want to take back off again and find some missions using your MobiGlass. There are two missions I would recommend. Now, if you're not in a combat, you don't have to take the first and you can go straight to the second, but the first is going to be a bounty hunting mission for 2,000 AUEC. Anything more than that's going to be a little bit too hard at this stage if you're not experienced in combat. This is a great opportunity to stretch your legs and get used to combat in Star Citizen with your ship. But if you want to skip straight ahead, then do the investigation mission where you find a missing client. That's going to take you to a cave where we're going to do some mining and is how you're going to make the bulk of your money in the early stage of this game. So let's go hunt that bounty quick and move on to mining. Finding bounties in Star Citizen for now is pretty easy. Once you've taken the mission, you're going to get an icon that marks your bounty's location. Once you've arrived to that location, they should appear and you'll be able to engage them. Now be careful, they can still pose a bit of a threat. The Buccaneer, for example, has a size 4 gun mounted coaxially with it that can do a lot of damage if it's aimed directly at you, so be very careful when you're engaging this sort of target. But if you're able to score a few hits with the auto gimbal, you're going to be able to pop him really quickly, and it's a great way, like I said, to get comfortable with the mechanics in Star Citizen or space combat. Be very, very careful though of the debris. They will blow you up if you run into them. Now, something I should note here at this point is that bounty hunting missions do actually show up for players, and if you see a player name under that bounty, make sure you stay away from that at this stage. They'll likely kill you because they're going to be more experienced at the game than you are. This is also why you shouldn't be a criminal this early in the game, because you'll be hunted by other players, and they'll pretty much know where you are at all times without you ever even knowing that they're stalking you until you're dead. But now that we've completed our first bounty, we're going to look for that investigation mission. So look under the investigation tab in the general section and find investigate a missing client. This is going to take us to a cave on a planet or moon. Ideally, Aberdeen is going to be the best location because it's going to yield the most profitable results. Aberdeen caves have a lot of hadonite, which is the most valuable resource that you can mine. And so if you're able to do it well, you can earn around 30,000 in an hour just by going to one of these caves. Now you should finally be arriving at your first cave. This is where the money making really begins, but you're going to want to be very cautious here. If you see any ships in the area, they may be headed to the same cave, or there may be somebody already down inside of it. If you want to communicate that you're friendly, you can either use chat or use proximity chat using the default plus symbol on your number pad to communicate. You can change this binding to whatever you like. I personally have changed it to my mouse 4 and 5 buttons on my mouse. Generally speaking, people in Star Citizen are more friendly than not. However, there is a chance you'll run into a hostile player, and so you should just take the cautious route every time. It would suck to spend an hour in a cave only to be killed very quickly by somebody camping the exit. Luckily though, this is not very common because the verse is pretty big and the chances of somebody being at your specific cave are pretty low, especially in Hurston. To activate your light once you enter the cave, hit T. And if you have not yet equipped your multi-tool, you'll need to do that now by going into your Mobiglass. You can do that by going again to your equipment inventory and going over to the utility tab. There you'll want to equip both your multi-tool as well as equip the attachment to that multi-tool, which will be a slot just underneath the item once it's on your belt. Here you can also equip your chem lights, which you can use to mark your path down. It can come in handy just in case you get lost, but don't worry, caves aren't as bad as they might seem. To retrieve your multi-tool, hit 5. You can also cycle from your multi-tool to your chem light by hitting the same button. The biggest dangers you're going to face in caves aside from players are going to be sheer drops, especially in planets like Hurston where you've got 1g of gravity. This sort of drop can break your legs and cause you to either immediately die or bleed out. That's why we have med pens on your belt. You can use them by hitting C just in case you damage yourself. If you're worried about getting lost in a cave, don't worry, caves are pretty linear until they get to a hub. Once you get to the hub, it'll split off into a few dead ends, and as long as you can make your way back to that hub and find your way around its edge, you'll eventually find your way out of the cave. Now, while this mission is to find a body, which will give you 4,000 UEC, you want to be looking around the edges of the cave to find mineable rocks, and you're going to be able to find 3 basic types. In order to scan them with the multi-tool in your hand, right-click pointing towards the rock. It'll scan and let you know what it is. The least expensive is Dolovine. It's pretty much irrelevant what this rock is worth because it explodes all the time, and so just think of it as an unexploded bomb and stay away from it. What you really want to be looking for is Aphorite and Hadonite. Aphorite's going to be worth around 1,500 per rock, and these are a lot easier to mine, so you might want to check for these purple ones. But if you're able to, prefer Hadonite, which is more of a pinkish hue. This is worth about 2,500 to 3,000 UEC per rock and is definitely the most valuable that you'll be able to find. In Aberdeen Caves, I was able to make around 30,000 UEC per hour just on these alone, so prefer these if possible. In order to mine a rock, step up to the stone that you would like to take and press the mouse 1 button. Using the scroll wheel, modify its power output, which you'll see here on the LCD readout on the back of the tool, up to 100 until you get to the green box. Try to stay within this green box. If you go into the red above it, it has a chance of exploding and immediately killing you. But you'll have some time. The beeper will get closer and closer to a solid tone, at which point it will explode. But just to be safe, stay out of it at all cost. Best and most efficient practice I've found is to scroll it all the way to 100 until you get into the green, and then very quickly scroll the mouse wheel down to around 50%. If it still goes into the red, continue dropping it down to a lower power level until it goes back into the green, and continue modifying that power level until you've got it all the way from right to left, fully green. At that point, the rock will fracture and release its very valuable load. To retrieve the stones, you can use the inner thought system as we've done before using the F key. You can simply just tap F towards the rock or hold F to select store. Continue this process as you proceed deeper and deeper into the cave until you locate the body. Luckily, these bodies are usually wearing an orange suit, which pop out pretty easily with your flashlight, and will also have a pink chem light nearby that you can actually take with you. A handy little souvenir that'll last about 30 minutes. While spelunking on your journey, you might come across areas where it may seem that you can't pass, but if they've got moss at the edge of that stone, it means that you can actually climb up it. Simply walk up to the face and jump, and you will mantle up top. Now eventually you'll need to see if your inventory is full. In order to do that, hold the inner thought key and press the little button in the center of the screen. Now a friend of mine actually told me that you can equip multiple rucksacks in your inventory, but seeing as how you only have one, I highly recommend that after about an hour and filling your bag, that you return back to your ship to go sell it at an outpost. This way you lower the risk of getting stuck, being killed by a player, or suddenly being disconnected. In the future, an intentional feature of the game is that if you die in a cave or somewhere in the world, you'll lose all your inventory but will be able to go back and retrieve it. Unfortunately, in 3.7, the retrieval part isn't yet in the game, and so if you find yourself getting stuck or being hunted, a good way to avoid losing your load is to actually unequip your backpack. That way, if you do die, you are able to recover your things once you respawn at your respawn point in Hurston or Alisar or wherever you're doing your mining. But I'm sure you guys are now wondering where you can actually sell your profitable load. I recommend you find an outpost on the planet that you're on. That way you don't have to waste too much time going back to the main city. You're going to be able to sell it for about the same amount of money, so you're not really losing anything by doing this. What you're gaining is time. On Aberdeen, for example, you have Norgard, which is a place where you can actually trade gold from. But here today we're going to be selling our valuable stones. And you should, if you filled up your backpack, make around 25,000 to 30,000 UEC, depending on if you filled your backpack fully up with Hadanite. You should repeat this process until you've accumulated around 80,000 UEC, which you should arrive to at around the hour 4 mark since you started playing. After you've accumulated your 70,000 UEC, it's time to use it at Lorville. So return back to the main city and find the Vantage Rentals kiosk, which is located centrally in the starport after you exit the elevators. We're going to use this because this is a way to ramp up the way you earn money in Star Citizen and to try out ships that you don't own. To use the system, simply approach the kiosk and use the F key. Here you'll have an assortment of ships to rent, but what I would recommend is you rent one of 2 ships. The Freelancer is around 34,000 per 24 hours, and it's a hauling ship that can also do pretty good combat. You can use it to fly with your friends, but also to ramp up the amount of money you make. Choosing the right routes, this ship will pay for itself in less than an hour. The second ship is a little more expensive at 41,000 AUEC per day, or 24 hours. This ship is a mining ship and it can only do mining. It will not do combat and it's a single-seater. So if you want to make money mining and you really enjoyed that aspect of Star Citizen, this might be for you. But personally, I prefer the Freelancer because it can do a little bit of everything. If you do get the Freelancer though, my guide continues just a little bit further here. You can earn up to 46,000 AUEC per hour if you follow my directions. Either you can stop at Selen's Galette Farms, or you could go to Bountiful Harvest on Daymar. There inside the outpost, you're going to want to purchase distilled spirits and fill your load up with your remaining cash. Then you're going to want to take your filled up Freelancer back to either Grimhex or to Port Alisar. Don't forget you can check your Mobiglass for these locations on the map. You may be tempted to run further routes with more expensive cargo, but the problem with that is that the turnaround time is too slow, and so your UEC per hour will be very much lower. The name of the game here is efficiency, and because these different locations have little to no atmosphere, you're going to be very quick back and forth between these areas in the round trip. That's how you're going to earn this much money, if you follow this diagram here. The reason why I have multiple options here is that the supply and demand for the server is going to change the more you sell this stuff. So you may try these different locations in different combinations in order to continually earn as much money as I've said here. The verse is a big place, and there's a lot more to explore, but now you've got the tools to go out and see it, and you know how to defend yourself. Star Citizen is still an alpha, but every patch brings more incredible content, and although the pace might not be as fast as some want, I am happy that I've been along for the journey so far. It's the excitement from viewers like you and the passion of the developers over at CIG that keeps me going. If it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more like it, you can help me out by liking and subscribing. So good luck on your journey, and I hope to see you out there in the verse.